right. Welcome back, everybody, to our latest episode of The Nest. That is the New England Sports Talk. We had a very eventful week, including 4 Celtics games, 3 Bruins games, the Red Sox about to begin the 2022 season, and the Patriots making a trade at the wide receiver position. And joining me for today's episode are Rohan Venkatesh and Anirban Chakraborty. Guys, how are you doing?
Good to be here as always, man. This is probably the best time of year. Baseball's about to start. I'm ready to start playing ball. I'm ready to start to see the Red Sox in action. I'm excited for that. We got other sports in action, and the other teams, they had mixed weeks, but baseball is back, man. Baseball is back.
Yeah, lots to talk about. Like Rohan said, we're looking forward to opening day. At last, long last, it's here. So yeah, let's get this show on the road.
Yeah, we'll talk about baseball, but first, let's talk about the Celtics, though, because recently it's been a little bit difficult for them. They lost Robert Williams during a win against the Minnesota Timberwolves, 134-112 last Sunday. Jason Tatum had 34 points, Brown with 31. They had a difficult game against Toronto. Obviously, Brown and Tatum did not play. It went to overtime. Then a loss to Miami on Wednesday, 106-98. They were actually outscored 27-15 in the fourth quarter. Tatum had 23, Brown with 28. And then on yesterday, April 1st, against the Pacers, 2 days ago, April 1st, 128-123 win. So they're kind of missing Rob Williams now. Like, their defense sort of seems a little bit shakier. They are playing the Washington Wizards as we speak, but overall, like, how big of a concern are you feeling about this loss for the Celtics?
I'm not feeling too concerned overall because the Celtics have really shown themselves to be a resilient team. Yeah, in that stretch, that loss to the Heat was a bad one, and it was a costly one because they were vying for first place in the East essentially, and that really sets them back. But I think right now, overall, I think the Celtics should be focusing on just getting into the playoffs and having home court. So being fourth seed or better, I really think should be the main focus as of now. I don't really think it matters much whether you're third seed or second seed or first seed. I don't really think that gets you much. As long as you're fourth seed or higher, having home court in the first round, that should be pretty good as far as the Celtics are concerned. But that showing against the Heat, it was a little difficult to watch. It was close all along, and then they kind of let it slip away at the end. They were able to take care of business against the Timberwolves and against the Pacers, but losing to the Raptors as well. That was they should have had that one. That's really one that they should have had.
They were up by 4 with a minute left. They should have been able to close that out. Obviously, I know Tatum and Brown weren't playing, but up by 4 with just a minute left, you should be able to kind of. And that's why
I'm not really as concerned overall because even though they lost, they still kept it close. Yes, the way that they let it slip away at the end was pretty bad, but I think that's pretty much the difference between having Tatum on your team and not having Tatum on your team is that in those close game situations, the Celtics can find a way to somehow make something happen. I think that it just wasn't there that night against the Raptors, and then against the Heat, that one was bad. That was I got it. That was painful to watch. But not all great things can last forever, right? The Celtics were on such a tear for so long. A blip is going to happen. These dips are going to happen. It's all part of the game. So I'll just sit back and watch how the rest of the season unfolds. I still think this is a great team, and I wouldn't be surprised to see them go deep into the playoffs.
Yeah, I will say one thing. So last week, I was kind of really adamant when I said that really, if they lose to Brooklyn, and even Brooklyn now, the way they're playing, they lost to Atlanta yesterday. So even Brooklyn now, I'm I think the Celtics can beat Brooklyn. But one thing that I'm a little bit more kind of worried now is I don't think Miami is a good matchup at all for the Celtics. I think for whatever reason, maybe it's Spoelstra, Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, the way that team is sort of constructed and built, the way they play together so well late in the game. We saw 2 years ago in the bubble when the Heat beat the Celtics in the Eastern Conference Finals. I think it's just something about Miami. It's just a bad matchup for the Celtics. So I would really hope the Celtics can avoid Miami altogether.
Yeah, and they can't do that.
Yeah,
they can't do that if the Celtics stay in the top 4 and if the Heat also stay in the top 4, because that way, since both teams that way they're guaranteed not to see each other at least in the first round.
Yeah, the first round I'm not as worried about.
And then if some other team can, but if the Celtics play the Heat in the first round and Celtics
Well,
haven't
that
really
won't
matched up
happen
well
because
against them.
Miami's the 1 seed and the Celtics would have to be the 8 seed then, and they're the 4, so they're not going to
Or
slip to
but
8.
but what's it's fully possible for say Miami to slip to fifth, right? Let's say they lose like 2 or 3 in a row and they slip to fifth, and the Celtics finish fourth. There you have it.
Is that possible? Can Miami still be 5th?
Yeah, it can happen. The first through four is pretty tight, but actually no. There's a lot of distance between fourth place and fifth place, so it would take something. It would take like some sort of major collapse. It's not. I'm not saying it's not possible,
Well,
but
the
the
Sixers
way the
are
Heat had been
fourth.
playing, it's yeah. Oh, the
Sixers are
Sixers are
fourth.
fourth.
They're
Okay.
2.5 games behind the Heat, so it's possible. Yeah, stranger things have happened this season. So, but yeah,
Maybe the
point
Celtics
taken.
can be the 3 seed because that way you avoid potentially playing Brooklyn like in the first round if you're the 2 seed and Brooklyn becomes the 7 seed after the play-in tournament. So maybe it's actually better to be potentially the 3 seed in this situation than the 2 seed or the 1 seed. Oh, the 1 seed would be nice, but I don't think they're going to be able to catch Miami 1.5 games behind them with like 4 or 5 games remaining. So I would
Yeah,
probably say the 3 seed
most
is probably
likely
the
the
next.
Bulls. Most
And
likely the
honestly,
Bulls. I'd say.
the playing around is just cheap in the regular season so much that 10 teams per conference. That's like 20 teams out of 30 that make it to the playoffs. Like that's you have to be in literally in the bottom third to miss the playoffs. So that means as long as you're not in the bottom third of teams and then you get hot at the right time, you can still win it all. That's pretty absurd. I'm all for expanded playoffs and stuff, but there's got to be some point. There's got to be some kind of cutoff. This is ridiculous.
Hmm.
I
Yeah,
guess
I
16
think
was kind of a lot, but 16 at least was okay. 20 out of 30 is that's ridiculous.
Those teams actually don't make the playoffs, like those 4 teams in the play-in round. They have to compete for the final 2 seeds. So it's not like they're actually guaranteed to make the playoffs. It's just
No,
they have
those
a
are considered
shot.
no, but those are considered playoff games, right? It's almost like the wild card round, right? In baseball, it's almost like that, right?
Well, potentially, so if the 7 seed plays the 8 seed, and whoever wins that game is going to be the 7 seed. Then the 8 seed plays the winner of the 9 seed versus the 10 seeds game. The loser of the 9 seed versus the 10 seed is already out of the playoffs altogether. So then the 8 seed and the 9 seed actually play each other for the final spot.
And
The
are
winner
these
of that
individual
seed.
games? Are these individual games or are these like a
Yeah, these are
best
individual.
of
So like
okay.
actually what happened last
So
year
it's
was
a
the
single
Memphis
elimination,
Grizzlies.
okay.
Yeah, actually the Memphis Grizzlies finished as the 9 seed, but they actually beat the 8 seed Warriors for the final spot in the playoffs. So the Warriors actually missed the playoffs last year, even though they would have been the 8 seed. So it was actually kind of interesting last year. But usually, like from what we've seen in the NBA playoffs, like usually the 8 seed doesn't have much success overall. So like I mean an 8 seed has
Then
only
it's
made
a
it to
waste
the
of then it's a waste of time even having them in the playoffs.
I mean, usually the 8 seed, like, I mean, there's been a handful of 8 seeds over 1 seeds. It has happened before, but like the only time an 8 seed has ever made it to the finals was in 1999. So that was a long time ago, and that was also a shortened season.
But it just cheapens the regular season though, in my opinion. No, I'm not one for saying okay, only allow like 2 or 3 teams in the playoffs and make the season ridiculously long like it is in baseball. I'm not in that camp. But allowing 20 teams out of like allowing 20 out of the 30 teams some kind of shot at competing for the NBA title after the season is over, it's pretty ridiculous. No one who's 10th in the conference should even be allowed a shot. Period. Like and you could probably quote me saying this in the future when inevitably at some point the Celtics end up being 10th in the conference and they squeak into the playoffs. I know something like that is going to happen. It's bound to happen at some point in the future, but it doesn't change my opinion about the system.
I mean, they actually really introduced this last year because the regular season was only 72 games versus 82. So that's what kind of happened. Like it got introduced initially just to kind of have a little bit of like fairness for those 10 games that would normally not be there. And I guess they really liked the rule because they implemented it back this year. So I'm not really big on this rule either, like the play-in tournament, but it was kind of implemented last year. Last year I could kind of understand because it was like a 10 games like that were not like played, and that can make a big difference. So that's probably where it happened last year. But this year I don't think like it should be there anymore. But I guess they really liked it for whatever reason. Like last year in
well,
the
the
play-in
reason
game, it
it
was actually kind of exciting because Tatum actually scored 50 points against the Wizards in that play-in game. So yeah,
well,
we'll see what
that's
happens.
their logic. I mean, at the end of the day, once the NBA gets a taste of having more games with the playoff mentality, that just inevitably means more people watching their games over the course of the season.
Then why don't we just make the
So
whole thing playoffs? Why don't we just get rid of the regular season
it's
altogether? Then like
basically, yeah, no, I agree with you. I don't think it's really. I mean, I think at a certain point it kind of like takes away some of the seriousness of the regular season. Not that I feel like that's already been an issue for a while, but I think my point here is that once the executives kind of see the, I mean it's every sport kind of has a march. Every sport wants to either add more games or keep the number of games where they are, right? I mean, the NFL added the extra kind of like playoff spot with the idea that it would make the rest, it would basically increase the level of competition for kind of the mid-tier teams who otherwise wouldn't have a shot. So I guess that's kind of what the logic is for the NBA. Like once they've had a taste of it, they'd be like, okay, like you mentioned, Tatum's 50-point game that wouldn't have happened without the play-in probably drove like a lot of viewers, a lot of engagement. So I guess from their perspective, it would make sense to keep it.
I would actually be in favor of having the season be 58 games. Just do a double round robin, 29 opponents, once home, once away, and call it good.
Would be interesting.
Kind of like they do in soccer leagues.
Yeah, I guess though. I guess the thing is that's different, or what's interesting is how again in like a lot of I guess American sports leagues they're divided into the East West or some kind of conferences. Because I know at least I don't know how the
Yeah,
NBA started with that, but I'm
but the
guessing.
the whole idea behind that is like way too many teams, and if you try to play every team, that's way too many games. But in this scenario,
exactly.
it's actually fewer games than the current 82 game schedule.
Yeah, it's fewer games. I don't quite know. I mean, I think a lot of it's like historical, where a lot of these, I know at least for baseball, right? The National League and American League were originally two separate leagues, and then after like 1904 or something like that, after the Red Sox World Series did not happen because the other team, I forgot who it was, but they refused to play them because they thought the American League was inferior to the National League. Then after that, that led to like the merger. But football is the same way. The NFC, AFC, those were originally two different independent leagues that later merged. I don't know how the NBA started quite, but I'm guessing there's something kind of similar there too, Eastern and Western. So I think to this day, like there's still a sense of like kind of greater regional rivalries that might, but that was what it was initially. And I think these days it doesn't matter that much because NBA is just such a, it's a frankly a global event, right? Like how much do people really care that much about, like how much do Boston fans care about playing like the New York Knicks or like the Brooklyn Nets in a rivalry game, you know? So
Well,
that is some
if
food
they
for
were
thought,
both
I guess.
close, if they were both close, then I guess more people would care.
Like close, like geographically.
No, close in the standings in terms of competitiveness.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, but I guess well, I guess you could say the Sixers. I mean, there were a few years where the Wizards were where our games against the Wizards were considered pretty interesting in the mid 2010s, right? And then the Sixers, kind of Embiid's first years, those are also kind of rivalry matchups for us. So I
Yeah,
would say there's a bit of that geography there too.
like
Like,
Boston DC is also becoming like an interesting rivalry. Traditionally, it's Boston New
eh,
York, but Boston DC is like the Celtics and Wizards. They don't really like each other, and then even in hockey, the Bruins and Capitals they have a lot of bad blood between them.
yeah,
There's
yeah. I guess the Nationals are the only one who just like, well, they used to be in Montreal, or there was before the Nationals, there were the
Yeah,
Montreal
but
Expos.
like the
So
closest thing with the Orioles and their division rivals.
yeah, the
But I guess that's
Orioles.
yeah. But if you consider that to be DC area, it's Baltimore. But if you consider
That's
that DC
true.
area,
Well, yeah, it's still DMV, right? It's still in
yeah.
Maryland. So, yeah, that's a good point. But yeah, that was kind of my point for why I think I feel like there must be some vestiges of that still left in why they structure the league the way they do. But again, like I said, once the whoever's like once it's very hard to like lower the number of games because when you do that, you're basically lowering the amount of revenue you're gonna get, and
But I don't know. I
that's kind
don't.
of a challenge
But I'm
for
not
them to
sure if I really
balance.
buy that though, because if most of the revenue is based on ticket sales, yes, I see what you're saying, which is why it probably won't work in like baseball because most of their money is from ticket revenue. But with leagues like the NBA, NFL, most of their money comes from TV deals and
Yeah, but
rights
then the
deals and
TV
TV
deals
revenue.
like are based on the fixed amount of games, right? Or how
Yeah, and
many
it also
games.
like
So
But no, but
yeah.
NFL has really lucrative TV contracts, and that's the shortest schedule, so it's not like it can't be done.
No, it could. I mean, I'd be interested if they could. I don't know. Like, it doesn't seem like there's any impetus to do that right now. Is what I like. I feel like you could. I could be wrong on this. I feel like in every sport, you generally see the idea that they want more games, not less. That's kind of the direct because
yeah, I
again, like
mean football,
regardless
it used to be
of a
14,
fallacy,
right?
right?
It used to be 14 games.
I totally disagree with that because it's just at some point it reaches saturation and the games lose meaning.
I mean, I agree. That is kind of why Thursday night, Monday night, like it feels like every night there's football now, right? I think they're gonna start a. I mean, they have some Saturday night games now. I mean, I think like you said, Rohan, like regardless of, I don't know. I mean, I'm guessing that they have a lot of accountants who are crunching out the numbers to make them believe what they do, but it does seem like as of now it's a march towards more games, and I just don't foresee a future where they would remove a game. You know what I mean? Because that's just the direction
Yeah,
they
it's
seem to
more
be going in.
likely that we have 90 NBA regular season games than 70 NBA regular season games.
Imagine if we get like a 162 game season for football. Imagine something like that.
That would be like 162 games would be 162 weeks, so that would be like a 3-year schedule.
No, imagine if they like actually played every single day.
They'd probably need like 80 people on their active roster. You'd probably see like honestly, I mean, think about how many players they would need. I mean, they'd probably have to merge the USFL with the NFL at that point, I'd imagine.
Or merge with the CFL.
Or the CFL. I mean, I'm kind of curious if there's any. I feel like I heard about that being a thing.
Actually, I have a strange feeling that like once Tom Brady's NFL career is done, he's probably going to go to the CFL. I have a strange feeling he's going to do that.
I don't think so. Like, why would he do that?
It's a way to extend your. It's a way to extend your career.
But like, what does he do there?
I mean, is there any president? Does anyone do that?
I'm not sure. I mean, the same way European soccer players, they finish out their career in MLS. It's kind of like that.
No, I know they do that there, but I feel like I don't know. Actually, I don't know. I thought I knew what he'd do, but I don't know that anymore. He's quite a character, so I guess I have no idea. He could very well do that. I personally think he's gonna play with the Bucks for another like 6 years, and he's probably gonna
into his 50s.
Yeah, I don't know. He's gonna do something. He's probably gonna emerge into like I don't know what he's gonna do after, but he's gonna probably play for another 6 years. I think as long as he's physically able to throw the ball, he will play. And that's
once
that's what I think.
He's gonna keep playing until he starts to suck, and once he starts to suck in the NFL, he'll go to the CFL where he will still be pretty good.
I mean, maybe I'd be pretty surprised. I feel like that would just be really strange from a brand. I mean, he's a very branding conscious guy. I don't really know how much.
Yeah, I think like once he's done with the NFL, he's gonna be done with playing football. Like I don't see.
Yeah, once he's done with CFL. So you think he does have CFL in him left?
No, I said once he's done with NFL. Like I don't think he's going to the CFL. I mean, why would he like do that? Like that's like going from like he's like dominant in the NFL, which is the top sports league in football in the country. So like, why would he go for like a downgrade at that point?
Why did David Beckham come and play in MLS then?
Well, that's different, right? I mean, that's because David Beckham. How old was David Beckham versus how old is Tom Brady?
I think Beckham
was like in his 30s.
30s, yeah.
But Brady is 44 and still dominant as an NFL quarterback. That's different than David Beckham, who had already like lost his step at like age 34 and probably thought he could play another 2-3 years. Brady's like already going to be like probably like 45. He's going to be 45 in August, so I don't think he's going to. I mean, I don't think he's going to do anything else besides playing the NFL.
Yeah, and also the European players too in the MLS make quite a bit of money, or at least play. I should say not just European. Anyone who's previously played in the European system. So like when Ricardo Kaká was on, I think it was Orlando. He was the highest paid player in the league.
Money.
He got paid like I don't remember what the average salary was, but he was being paid. He was by far the most. It wasn't even close. Versus, I don't know what the CFL spending cap is, but I'm guessing he's not going to get anywhere near even the money he got at the New England Patriots.
A starting quarterback for the Toronto Argonauts, number 12, Tom Brady.
It could if it does happen. I'll know where to find you. So
we can start covering the Toronto Argonauts on the show too, then, right?
Or wherever he ends up going.
I guess. I mean, I don't know where else. You could go to
the Montreal Alouettes.
Maybe he could go to the USFL. Yeah, and also maybe in a few years
or maybe even the XFL. The XFL is back, right? Or the Arena Football League.
Oh yeah, you could do that. I mean, or all those games they're having in Europe. Maybe they're going to start a European football league, like a European American football league.
I think something like that used to exist. Like I remember back in like the Madden 04 video game, you could play like as the Amsterdam Admirals.
Were they good?
Or no, they're pretty terrible.
Huh.
But anyways, let's we've segued a bit.
Claymores.
We have segued a bit. Let's just wrap up the Celtics. I don't know how we ended up talking about Tom Brady's playing in the CFL from the Celtics, but here we are. So anyways, let's just wrap up the Celtics quickly. Anything else we want to discuss? They are playing the Wizards right now.
That should be a pretty barring some sort of major incident. That should be a pretty slam dunk game.
Yeah, I mean, they are winning right now when I
Yeah.
last checked.
Yeah, at this point, I think the regular season coming to a close. Just close it out. Avoid.
Stay healthy.
Yeah, stay healthy. Like that's the important thing, right? I mean, Rob Williams is. I think he is a big loss. I know that the Celtics do have an open roster position, so they could potentially fill it with a free agent because at the end of the day, Rob Williams, when he's healthy, he's just a unique player. I mean, his size, his strength, his defensive ability, his offense too. He was contributing on the offense too. I mean, yeah, like he was averaging almost 10 rebounds a game this season. Has 2 blocks a game on the defensive side. But also I think we saw earlier, right, his ability to threaten in the paint, to draw coverage in the paint. Those are things you can't replace as easily with any of the guys we have on our roster. So I think at this point it's kind of like you said, just keep them healthy. Once we against the Wizards or something, if we're up by 15, 20, just take Tatum out and really the entire fourth quarter if you have to. I mean,
stay fourth or higher. Just don't slip to fifth. As long as you can stay fourth or higher, I'll be happy.
Yeah.
It's not worth chasing that 1 seed. It's not worth it.
Yeah.
I mean, at this point, yeah. So that's what I'd say about the Celtics.
Yeah, I mean, I like the way they're sort of playing overall. Like, obviously, losses against Miami happen, so it's good to kind of sometimes be grounded as well, which I think this team can use from time to time. So it's good to have these types of losses sometimes just to really make sure they sort of stay grounded and stay humble. Because, yeah, I mean, I think the playoffs are going to be very interesting. And I think they have potential to do well. So, yeah, I mean, that will be the Celtics coverage. Does anyone else want to discuss them at all? Okay, yeah, then let's talk about the Bruins a little bit. I mean, obviously some disappointing loss against Toronto.
2 for 3. Actually, like
yeah.
on most, on a win-loss perspective, I'd say overall a pretty good week. But that one loss was a pretty bad loss.
That was bad, like 6-4 against the Maple Leafs.
In fact, it was 6-1 at one point. The Bruins managed to net 3 more and make it look close.
Well, how worried are you about Swayman now if they have to play Toronto in the playoffs?
Not that worried. I think that was just a bad
I
day.
think it's just a one-off.
Swayman has generally been pretty good, and I mean some of those were not really his fault. I mean, a lot of them were his fault. And anytime you give up 6 goals, actually I don't think all 6 goals were given up by him because he was.
No, I think he did give up all 6, right? I don't think Allmark actually gave up a goal.
But they did end up pulling him, and the defense was also shoddy at best. I mean, Pasternak did tie it early on, and then the Maple Leafs, they just pretty much exploded for 5 more. That first period, it was already 3-1 by the end of the first period. It already felt over at that point. By the time the first intermission came up, and it was already 3-1, and it just looked like such a tall task from there that. Yeah, like if you just watch that entire first period, they just didn't show up. I mean, their skating game was off. I mean, they weren't successful in chasing pucks or anything like that. Yeah. Just the basics. It was just an all-out bad game.
They didn't look great.
The other 2 games were great. 8-1 against the Devils and 5-2 against the Blue Jackets. But yeah, that one loss against the Leafs, it hurt because they're chasing them for 3rd in the division, and that's going to hurt a lot. Now they're more likely going to be a wild card team, and they're probably going to have to play a 1 seed. There's a good chance they might end up playing Florida or Tampa, which is not going to be fun. But maybe it's not so bad. Maybe because I mean the Bruins have shown that Tampa's beatable. As long as we don't end up playing Carolina, I'll be happy. But yeah, it was not. I'd say overall it was a not so good week. Even those 2 wins, 1 loss, I would say not so great of a week overall.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of how we feel about the Celtics, right? Like overall, it might be like a good week in terms of like they won more than they lost. I mean, those Celtics, I guess, yeah, they won.
But one thing though is that, but the thing is that this time against bad teams, they were able to really just destroy them.
I mean, Columbus yesterday, Eric Holla with 2 goals, Marchand with 1, and Swayman gave a better, more kind of like convincing performance this time, and they played Columbus again tomorrow, this time in Columbus. Yesterday was at the Garden in Boston. So, I mean, I thought overall, like, at least they bounced back like 8-1. Like, Allmark was terrific. And I think maybe they were able to finally, I mean, obviously the Devils are a bad team, but like,
but that's the thing, right? But that's the thing. The week before they played against Montreal, who were dead last, and they barely beat them. Yeah. They barely beat them. It was like, oh my God, we were just barely taking care of business against bad teams. Like against the Devils, the Bruins just showed like just how dominant they were.
And how bad the Devils are too.
Yeah, it was like it was even worse than it was even more lopsided than what was the 7-1 game that the Bruins lost to Carolina. I mean, anytime I see 7-1, I can't help but think of the Brazil Germany game from 2014. I'm sorry, I can't help but mention that. But this is even more lopsided than that. But anyway,
Yeah, it was a good performance, I guess. I definitely think we're we're seeing some good performances from players like Howell on the center. Though I hear that there are other teams, of course, who are very interested in prying him away from the Bruins, and so I guess that is something to keep an eye on. But yeah, I agree with you that at this point, I mean, seeding is only as important as really avoiding maybe the worst outcome, and the Panthers have definitely kind of turned it around a bit recently. I mean, they've been on a few game winning streak. I know a few weeks ago we were talking about how they themselves had actually been struggling with some of their losses. So yeah, I mean, as long as I think what you said is we just really want to keep it from we want to end the season kind of quietly, that without any kind of slip ups.
for the Celtics, ending it quietly is going to be a good thing. For the Bruins, though, they're going to have to make it to that top 3 in the conference. Being a wild card it's not ideal. Although maybe it's not so bad because home ice and hockey really doesn't mean as much as home court does in basketball.
Yeah, I mean, I would really be wary of Carolina because they have just been a matchup nightmare for the Bruins this year. Even Florida, I would really want to avoid, but at least Florida, they have been able to beat once this year. Carolina just beat them badly in all 4 games this year, that's what makes me really worried if they have to play Carolina. Even Tampa, I'm not as worried about them, not because they aren't good, but I just kind of wonder like how tired they are from like their 2 previous Stanley Cup
If they play Tampa, that series goes at least 6 or 7 games. I'm still not ready to say who wins it, though. At least
it would
6
be
games,
kind
it
of
probably goes all
nice.
7.
It would be kind of nice to sort of end Tampa's like run as Stanley Cup champions too, right? Wouldn't it feel nice to be the team that sort of ended that run?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, otherwise, I mean, they're basically one Stanley Cup win away from being a dynasty.
I mean, I would already say they kind of are. I mean, 2 like back to back is very impressive.
Yeah, it kind of rivals that Chicago dynasty from the mid 2010s, early to mid 2010s.
Or Pittsburgh, right?
Yeah.
Pittsburgh won back to back in 16 and 17, right? And then the Capitals beat them in 2018, and then they haven't been the same since then. But I mean, yeah, we'll see what happens. I mean, obviously, I think the Bruins are sort of. I mean, these are better performances. Obviously, like again, like slip ups against Toronto, they happen from time to time. They might happen in the playoffs too, where you lose a game badly. You just don't have it. Your goaltending isn't good enough for that particular night. But I'm not as worried about it because, like, obviously these types of games happen, right? Like we saw with the Celtics against Miami. It's almost like that caliber loss. But I think overall, like,
but that game was actually close, though. But that game was close against Miami. It was disappointing in the end, but close.
Yeah, I mean, I think it just happened that Swayman just didn't have it that day, right? Like, doesn't mean he won't be able to have it.
This one, the 6-4 is a deceiving score. It's a deceptive scoreline because they were just out of it, like completely out of it from the beginning.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, but it was like I think like sometimes it just happens, right? Like you just sort of get the wind knocked out of you, and then you're not able to recover, right? Maybe like the closest thing I can think of, like remember St. Louis in 2019.
But hey, the last 3 goals in regulation were scored by Boston. You know when that happens in a Boston-Toronto game, what usually happens?
Yeah, I mean, except this time Toronto had 6 goals already.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean that's it. Sort of. I think the Bruins are sort of still okay. Like they're still trending in the right direction now. Like I mean, before I have been skeptical. I still am skeptical of this team. Like I still won't fully buy in until I see like them actually make it past the second round. If they make it past the second round, then I'll really kind of buy into this team. But really, they haven't done that yet. Obviously, it's still early. So that's sort of how I always view the Bruins. They always sort of tease you in a way. So it's really coming down to how they do in the playoffs. Like the first round, I think they should be able to get by because Cassidy's teams are usually pretty good in round 1.
Well, it really depends on who you get, though. It doesn't matter if it's the first round or the Stanley Cup final. It depends on who your opponent is.
Who would be their opponent right now if it ended today?
I believe it. I think it would be Tampa. I could be wrong, though.
Okay, then I think they can match with Tampa.
Yeah, I got to check that, though, but I believe it's Tampa.
I mean, Tampa's very good, obviously, and they should be taken with respect as they are the back-to-back champions. But at some point, that run has to end, right?
Yeah. They're a good team, but also beatable.
Yeah, I mean, we'll have to see what happens. I mean, in that regard. But okay, so yeah, I mean, that's going to be our Bruins talk. Let's talk about the Red Sox now. So we will talk more about opening day, like kind kind of give a preview in our next episode. We don't have that fully ready yet, but we will talk a little bit about the Red Sox today and kind of our expectations for the 2022 season. So, yeah, I mean, Nathan Eovaldi will be starting on opening day against the New York Yankees at Yankee Stadium. So it will be interesting because sort of this season, like Trevor Story, they added Trevor Story, and they've made some additions like Rich Hill as
JBJ.
well. Yeah, Jackie
Coming
Bradley
back.
Jr. is
That's
back.
a good
They did
addition.
lose Hunter Renfroe to the Milwaukee Brewers, but overall, I think like the Red Sox, my expectations for them is they should be a playoff team again. They should be in the mix because, I mean, they've probably they're still a good roster. Their offense should be very good. Like they should be probably one
I
of the
think they
best
should be.
offenses.
I would want them to at least match what they were able to do last year. What they did last year for that quality team was considered an overachievement. I think that level of achievement right now would probably be considered the standard or almost expected.
And I
At least
trust
based on the
Alex
additions that they
Cora
made
as well. I think Alex Cora, like he's smart with like sort of how he manages the game overall. I like what he does. So I think I have expectations for this team to be a playoff team again and be in the mix for the AL East division title. Obviously,
the
I think
Rays
the
are always going to be
Yankees-
tough though.
Yeah, Yankees and Rays will both be in the mix for the division. But I think obviously, I mean, they beat both of them last year.
And you
So,
can't really forget about Toronto either.
yeah, Toronto is actually a good team too. No, I mean, this besides Baltimore, really, I think the AL East will be a tough one. Toronto almost made the playoffs last year.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting. I think the Red Sox should be like a good team again. I think it's going to come down to some of the other things. How well can they sort of how do they match up against teams like Houston with like the Astros? Because last year, like they were doing so well until like Game 4 of the ALCS when they just couldn't hit the ball after that. So we'll have to see what happens from that point.
Yeah, it's going to be an exciting season. It's long, obviously. It's like the first few out of 162, but anytime you're going up against the Yankees on opening day, it's going to be an interesting one to watch.
Yeah, and the Yankees have
gonna be
extra
exciting.
kind of fire because they lost to the Red Sox last year in the wild card game, which ended their season. So it'll be
Yeah.
interesting. It's always interesting to kind of start off against the Yankees, and the Yankees should be good again, at least in the regular season. And they've sort of been like disappointing in the playoffs since 2009, since they won it in 2009, but they still should be like a tough team.
I still think that the AL East is going to send 3 teams to the playoffs. I think the 2 wild cards are going to be from the. Actually, no, there's more wild cards this time, right? Because the playoff format is different. So there's a very good chance. There's a very good chance that we might even see like the Red Sox, Yankees, the Rays, and the Blue Jays in the playoffs. That very well could happen with the new playoff format. It's a possibility. I'll be excited.
That would be pretty exciting. I think this year it's just gonna be a really fun season. I know Trevor Story said, yeah, we have a sick lineup, on the offense, and he's right. And I think a lot of people are really excited about Rafael Devers this season, as kind of like that power hitter who especially emerged at the end of last year. I think Buck Showalter recently said that he reminds him of a young Robinson Cano, which is pretty high praise because we all remember,
I remember
what
Robbie
Cano was
Cano.
like, right, in the late 2000s. But yeah, you were saying, Red Sox.
Well, I will
Yankees
say I
opening
hope he
day.
doesn't end up like Robinson Cano because Robinson Cano got busted for
end up.
steroids.
Yeah, the beginning. I'm just talking about the beginning, right? That just like when he was really
Mid-2000s.
young. I mean, I'm just saying he's a
yeah.
likable, really good player. That's just what he was. It was like, I mean, obviously he was on the Yankees, so I didn't like playing against him. But yeah, you have to respect he's a great guy, like a great player in those early years. But kind of going back to the Red Sox Yankees thing that Rohan was talking about, I think it is always really special because it is one of those things where no matter how the fortunes of the teams differ in years, it's still, I think it's one of those matches that retains some significance, no matter how well the teams are doing. Like
It's
I remember
arguably the rivalry, the biggest rivalry in all of sports. It's definitely one of the biggest, arguably the biggest.
Yeah, and you could say like I remember I think it was 07 the opening day which we played against the Yankees that year, and that was a great game. I remember
07? No, 07 opening day was against the Royals, wasn't it?
Or was it 08? Which one was it? It was one where
the 08 was in Japan.
I remember we had an opening day
2010
against them.
was against the Yankees.
It was where
Justin Pedroia hit a home run.
Derek Jeter hit a home run off the Green Monster to tie it.
2010 and 2013 was the last opening day, I think.
Yeah, that was.
I think it was 2010. Then
I
must be remembering 2010. But I remember Derek Jeter hit a home run in that game. But yeah, no. My point is like there's always like a bit of drama that comes with it, kind of a bit of that symbolic significance, right? That you're really part of this really long-standing tradition. It's kind of special. So I am glad that that's how we're starting the season.
Yeah, anytime you see the sign of spring coming in the air, and you're ready to hear the crack of the bat and the pop of the glove. So I'm I, I'm the start of baseball season is always something to celebrate.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
so. I agree with you.
Yeah, they've also been playing for the most part pretty well in spring training, which is a good sign just because like you never want to like be completely awful in spring training. So I think they should still like be a good team. I expect them to have a competitive season. So yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
But
guess
that will be
what's the starting pitching looking like, Rohan? Do you think Nate Eovaldi is gonna be our
I
big
I I,
one?
I think I think Ivaldi and Pivetta is probably gonna be the core of that rotation if I had to guess.
then Rich Hill as well, right? And
Rich
Michael
Hill's yeah.
Waka.
Rich Hill is going to be like a good addition as well. Waka, a decent addition. I mean, he was good back in the day. I don't know how good he still is, but it's always a good addition to have in the pitching rotation. I'm not quite sure who would be in that fifth spot. I mean, we know that Chris Sale is going to be out for a while.
Yeah. Well, Rich Hill then gave up some big hits against Tampa, I guess. So a bit of a hard landing to life and as a Red Sox team.
And if that's the case, you can always move him over to the bullpen. I mean, you can Alex Cora can move the pieces around as he sees fit.
Yeah.
That's true. He's definitely. I think he moved Travis Shaw as well to the minors, right? Last
Yeah,
week.
They
yeah.
also signed, I think, Derek Holland, formerly with the Texas Rangers. I mean, I think he also accepted a minor league assignment. So let's see what happens there. I mean, yeah, I mean, we don't have that much baseball this week. We'll discuss that more during our next episode. So, yeah, I mean, that will be it for the Red Sox. Let's just talk a little bit about the Patriots now. I mean, I guess the big news for the Patriots is Devante Parker, formerly with the Miami Dolphins. The Patriots acquired him. They gave up a third-round pick for 2023, and they also received a fifth-round pick. I mean, Parker is a pretty good player overall. Like, I mean, last season, he actually played 10 games. He missed 7 due to injury. 43 catches, 515 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2020, 14 games, 63 catches, 793 yards, and 4 touchdowns. His best season was in 2019 when he had over 1,200 receiving yards. But I mean, I think obviously my take is I think it's a good trade. It is a little bit kind of like risky in the sense that Parker has battled injuries the last 2 years, so you kind of wonder how healthy he'll be. But I mean, I think it definitely is an improvement to the receiving group bringing in a guy like Devante Parker. So I like the move overall. I'm just not entirely sure if he'll be able to stay healthy.
Yeah,
Agree with
when you're
that.
getting it from a division rival, right? Like the Dolphins, it always helps to have that. But yeah, it definitely does help since the Dolphins are probably going to be more competitive this year, especially getting Tyreek Hill. That's going to be they're going to be a tougher opponent this year. But what is interesting though is that giving up those draft picks in 2023, that's next year, and then fifth round pick in 2022 this year. So it looks like the Patriots are really
Patriots
going
get the
all
fifth
in
round
on.
draft pick in 2022. So the Patriots got Parker and a fifth round draft pick in 2022 for
Okay,
the
they
third
got the draft.
rounder
Okay,
in 2023.
okay, but it does seem like more and more focus is being put on winning now. So I guess which really goes against kind of what I thought was the best approach for the Patriots was to rebuild. But I guess that's not really what they're pursuing. But you know, making it to the playoffs and getting thrashed in your first game last year. I guess an improvement. If there's a slight improvement from that, then I guess I'll take it. But whether that'll actually lead to an improvement, I'm not quite sure. Yeah, I mean J.C. Jackson is gone, but we have Malcolm Butler now, so at least our corner situation seems at least not too bad. Of course, quarterback situation, Mac Jones is going to be in his second year. Different offensive coach, so it's going to be. I'm curious to see how this new team kind of holds itself together next year, especially given the way the last season ended.
I think some of the offseason acquisitions we made have definitely added some fresh faces. I think retaining some players too is going to help with making that cohesive environment like kind of continue. I mean I think re-signing Trent Brown was a good thing in that regard, and yeah, like I think there are some fair questions about his injury track record, whether he's going to be able to stay healthy for a full season. We haven't really seen that in recent years, including last year, like how many games he missed in the beginning. but it's still important. I mean, he's still, when he plays, he's definitely a really important player for us. But I think for Devante Parker, I think it is a sensible deal for us. I mean, I'm not gonna, I think he's a veteran receiver at this point, and he had a really, probably his best career year was 2019, and then of course in 2020, kind of 2020 and 2021 had some injury track records. But even when he played last season, I think it is important to remember he didn't get as much target share in Miami, even when he did play, mainly because Jalen Waddle, of course, broke out as one of the best receivers in the league. And also you have Mike Gesicki, a tight end, who also draws a lot of targets from Tua. So I think, when we look at who's a winner here, I think the Miami, first of all, I think they have to be very, very happy, right, with their deal, because they got Tyreek Hill. They clearly had no need for Devante Parker because, okay, look, they're going to be thrown to Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle next year. All right, that's who they have. And then they got Cedric Wilson from the Cowboys, and Cedric Wilson was another guy who on the Cowboys wasn't getting much of a shot when he was behind Amari. Well, Amari obviously left, but last season he was behind Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, and Michael Gallup. So I think Cedric Wilson's probably coming. He's coming as a number 3 flex for them, and I think Devante Parker, the writing was on the wall. So from the perspective of the Dolphins, to kind of have that trade and acquire some draft capital made a lot of sense. I think for us, we were looking for another kind of wide receiver to join our pack. I think he's around for 5 or 6 million on the salary, which is really reasonable for what we're looking for. And I think I kind of see him as a veteran receiver. I don't see him necessarily really breaking out to be like the number 1 for us. I've really seen the evidence or reason to believe he'll be better than like Kendrick Bourne or Jacoby Myers next season. Like his best career thing was 9 touchdowns in 2019. Since then, he's had like 2 and 4 respectively. So I think it just adds more depth, right? And that it basically means that as much as I love N'Keal Harry, it means that instead of having to play N'Keal Harry in games like last season against Buffalo when we were there in December, you can play Devante Parker, if he's healthy. And I think that at least is an upgrade, right?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely is an upgrade. But
Yeah,
we'll
and
have to see.
I do want to also mention, like, along with Devante, I mean, like I said, I don't think we were ever expecting this season to be, after we spent like 100 million last season. I think we were never going to see us getting like a flashy name like Tyreek Hill joined for like 30 million a year. We were never going to see that. Okay, right? So at least I'm happy to see a few sensible things. Like I know we got Jabril Peppers at safety, right? And I think he's actually a good acquisition. He's really fast. He's really he's actually quite a good safety, and it's and like I said, we're kind of moving the Patriots. I think there's a changing philosophy towards making us a more mobile, quick team rather than kind of big physical players, in kind of reorganizing the strengths of our defense. So I think there are I think quietly we are making moves. I think part of the problem is when other teams are getting moves like Tyreek Hill, it's really easy to not see what we're doing too. So I do want to kind of keep that in mind, that we should have that perspective on what we're doing this off season.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense.
Yeah, no, agreed. So yeah, I mean that will basically be our coverage for this week's episode. Obviously, the Celtics are currently beating the Wizards, 77-60, and the Bruins play tomorrow. And yeah, we'll continue to follow the Patriots. The draft is at the end of this month in April, so we'll definitely be like previewing that more. But yeah, that's going to be our episode for today. Obviously, a lot to talk about next week for sure. But yeah, stay tuned for our latest episode next week. But yeah, enjoy the rest of your week,
All right,
everyone.
play ball.
Yes.
Peace.